Hello, thank you for joining me here at Bert's Books. This one, I'm going to try and do this quickly with a minimum of kerfuffle and waffle. This one really is just an update. That last one I did, which I think I titled Never Neglect Your Local High Street. Well, thing was, as it turns out, that one was only, in a way, a taster for my next visit to one of the same shops. Now, I don't know if I just didn't notice some of this other stuff when I was in there the previous time, or if they kind of put some more stock out in the interim. But, again, for £1 a book, I did so well the last time I went in there. So let's go through what I picked up. I did do very well on the film screenplay type of treatment. So first off, I don't know if I've ever even seen this film. Sunday Bloody Sunday, starring Glenda Jackson, Murray Head, Peter Finch, directed by John Schlesinger, produced by Joseph Yanni. So yeah, not bad for £1. Next, William Goldman. We touched on him when I did one a couple of years ago on his novel Magic. This is the screenplay for the Western Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which was published in 7th printing, incidentally, published in 1969. Of course, a treatment of the film starring Paul Newman, Robert Redford and Catherine Ross, co-starring Strother Martin, and directed by George Roy Hill. So yeah, screenplay by William Goldman. Not a bad find. Famous, of course, for the end sequence, which was memorably parodied by the comic strip team in the Fistful of Travellers checks. Anyway, next, still in a Western theme. Now, I was trying to explain to the lady behind the counter, this is the film in which Bob Dylan acts, and he may be possibly the film, much as a fan as I am of the director, who I've talked about in here before, but I'm not sure personally if Bob Dylan's inclusion as an actor was the best choice. Anyway, I haven't yet scrutinised the screenplay for the immortal lines: beans, succotash, beef stew, beans. It is the screenplay for Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Sam Peckinpah, what year was that? 1973. I think it was starring Chris Christopherson and James Coburn amongst others. One of those famous Peckinpah westerns. The various cuts of, well, I think there was studio politics about it, and consequently various cuts have seen the light over the years. Still a decent, even with Dylan's kind of, I do wonder if they could have just edited him out and it still wouldn't have been any worse for it. Although, you know, his presence in the soundtrack is a different question, of course. But anyway, that might not be a popular opinion, but a nice find for £1. And from there, now this one, I've got something else of the same series by this author, but in New English Library edition. This one, Pinnacle, New York edition, The Drums of Dracula by Robert Laurie. Now I do have, like I say, sitting on the toilet system, there's another Dracula novel which I've never read. It's just sat there. But anyway, this one, as the title and the graphics would suggest, it's not about Dracula's drum kit, which is rumoured to have been a Gretsch with Zildjian cymbals. Remember where you heard that first? This is actually voodoo themed, so they've kind of done evidently a bit of a genre splice to sort of get a bit more mileage out of the Dracula mythos. If only Dracula, I don't know, we all have our sort of internal image of what Dracula would look like. Quite often that would be Christopher Lee. I don't think I ever envisaged Dracula as either Bob Hoskins or, worse, Mick McManus, the World of Sport wrestler. Either way, yeah, kind of odd choice of treatment there for Drac, but what do I know? Anyway, I've got, like I say, I've got at least, I might even have 2 by this author in this series, and one of these days I'll read one. Maybe it'll be this one, who knows? Anyway, to the next one. Now, it's tempting to make, I suppose, what's the obvious but fairly tasteless and probably rather mean-spirited joke about the title of this one. Yes, reading between the lines, I haven't read far into this yet. I would say probably I was an inducted kamikaze. I was a trainee kamikaze. I was a prospective kamikaze. Clearly our Nagatsuka made it back. Obviously, so I don't know the circumstances, whether he was, I think, there would have been a lot of people who were inducted or volunteered. I think that process was, anyway, I haven't got to that part of the book, so I don't know. I believe, I shouldn't really be making fun or getting cheap cracks out of what really is a really kind of tragic subject, a really unpleasant subject. And in fact, I occasionally visit the RAF Museum in Hendon, and I think they've been doing swapsies with one of the other aviation museums in the country, and the last time I was in there they had one of those Japanese, not the device you see on the cover, but the dedicated solid fuel rocket kamikaze machine, the Oka Cherry Blossom. I think it was nicknamed the Fool by Allied intelligence. But the standing next to one of those things, the kind of creepy feeling you get, is what a sinister concept. So I shouldn't really be making cheap cracks about it. So, but yeah, I'm not. This clearly, I would imagine that the guy was at least inducted and never quite got as far as the deciding mission. But it's got this. This has one of those very This is New English Library, incidentally. This is one of those very of its time New English Library war book treatments. I've got another one on a German theme called, it's somewhere kicking around, Gunther Blömertz's Heaven Next Stop, I think it's called. Not a great book, if I'm honest, but it's very similar kind of cover treatment to this one, obviously with a German plane and so on. But I probably will persist with this one. I think it'd be quite an interesting read. And evidently one of the donors had a bit of a theme to their reading, because also I've never read this one, The Fall of Hong Kong by Tim Carew. Now I've seen variations. In fact, I have variations of that graphic. Behold the Lord High Executioner. Again, I'm making shitty cheap jokes at something that my granddad's generation weren't laughing at this stuff. But there's a number of paperbacks from I guess that post-war period up to the 80s or so, featuring variations of that guy, shirtless knight of Bushido, wielding his sword, and presumably that's an execution. That's an execution of a helpless prisoner about to take place there. So this probably isn't bright colourful cover, but it's not going to be particularly cheery reading. So yes, not just another war book, but a highly charged document of disaster and devotion. So anyway, I'll save for last. I'm told this is a film with Warren Oates in it. I haven't seen it, but as far as a title goes, fellow overgrown schoolboys, rally round now, prepare yourselves. How could I leave that on the shelf? Contrary, in fact, I don't know if that actually is modelled on Warren Oates. He's got a sort of suitable moustache, but it looks like a sort of 60s edition, but it seems to be a 1987 edition. It might just have replicated vintage graphics on it, but yes, I imagine that the title says, I gather there's a sort of underground spectator sport and gambling activity centering around the competitive instincts of two male chickens. But there you go. So that's what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 £7 in the charity shop. All that for £7. I'm very happy with that. So I'll be keeping an eye on their shelves over the coming weeks, and I'll keep you posted what else I find. Thank you.